ask you to stand and let's sing a little bit of God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. He cares for me. He cares for me. He cares for me. He's so good to me. Do it again. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. Brother Tommy Monroe, you lead us in prayer, would you? All right, let's turn around and shake hands as we have the time for it.
See you. All right, it's good to see you here tonight. Appreciate you coming out for the Wednesday night prayer meeting. And as you make your way back to your spot, let me just tell you how much I appreciate your faithfulness. I know that by the looks of everything outside, as it seems like every day about this time, it looks like the bottom's about to fall out. But I appreciate you braving the weather and coming on out and being a part of the service tonight. I hope everybody has had a good week up to this point. And I want to start tonight, as I always do, by making some prayer requests known to you, updating you as best I can, and asking you to be much in prayer for a number of different people. First of all, and I think most everybody is aware of this by now, but I think all of you know that Brother Squire Parsons went home to be with the Lord, and I want to ask you to be much in prayer for his family. His wife, Linda, is a very, very sweet lady and has always been so helpful to us during the somewhere between 40 and 50 years that Squire came here every single year in February, going way back to when I was still a teenager and up until the last 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years when he had to stop touring. He's been coming here, and she was always such a help to us in making arrangements and making sure that everything was taken care of. So please be in prayer for her, for his children, and all the extended family. I know that they'd appreciate your prayers during this time. And other families that have lost loved ones from here in our church, continue to pray for the family and friends of Miss Emmy O'Haver. Continue to pray for Sean and Carrie and Carson and the homegoing of Sean's mother. Continue to remember Miss Judy Murphy and all of her family and her mom's passing. Pray for the family of Miss Mary Jo Vaughn and her homegoing. Just remember all these different families that have lost loved ones here in just the last week or so. And then we've got others that I just want you to be praying for their situations. I understand, and I hope I'm right about this, but I understand that Miss Jerry Moats is back in the hospital in Birmingham, and in fact may be in ICU. I'm not sure about that, but that's what I was told, so I hope I'm accurate passing that on to you. But please remember her in your prayers. Continue to be much in prayer for Chris and Deb. Remember especially Deb, as we mentioned Sunday, she had a stroke and had to be in the hospital, and they've released her from the hospital up to Encompass in Gadsden, and she's doing well, but they wanted to keep her in some kind of place to just keep monitoring all of her blood pressure, heart, all of that. She did not have any lingering after effects from the strokes, and we're thankful for that, but they are still wanting to keep a very close eye on her for a while. So pray for her and Chris. I know they'd appreciate your prayers, and so remember them. And then also continue to pray for Steve Strange. That's Carolyn Lipscomb's brother. A lot of you know Steve from his years here. Steve had quadruple bypass and still in the hospital, may be there for another few days, and may end up going to some type of rehab. That's still kind of up in the air about what exactly they're going to do, but just pray for him that everything will continue to go well there. Continue to remember David and Jan, for Terry and Paulette, for Brother Charlie Watts. Brother Charlie got some good news from his test results back on Tuesday yesterday, and he does have the aneurysm, but small enough that they're just keeping an eye on it, and they didn't see any other issues, and we're thankful for that. So you continue to pray for him, for Brother Ronald, for Miss Sue Lee, for Patrick Griffin, that's Nancy's son, you remember them, for Jimmy Lipham, for Dennis and Debbie Nance's son-in-law, for Sandy Borders, Steve and Carolyn Wallace, Brother Bob and Miss Brenda, always want you to pray for them. Again, for Chris and Deb's family, for their son Greg, keep praying for him, for Colby Ingram, for Cindy Holbrooks, for Bon Rousey, his wife Becky, for Richard and Vicki Haynes, for Dr. Shoemaker's granddaughter Ella, for Miss Joanne's son Perry, and for Miss Orly Kirby. So a lot of folks that we always pray for. And then, of course, remember our young people that are down at the Bible camp. They've been having really good crowds down there. We're seeing, as he's getting into his second year of this, starting to see good growth, and we're excited about that. So you be praying for them, for the adults that are down there working, giving assistance down there. So you pray for them. For those that are back here in the fellowship hall with the younger kids, be praying for them. And just ask that God will bless all these different groups, and especially for these different families that have lost loved ones. So let's pray for them. Let's ask the Lord to be with each one. And right now, let's bow for a word of prayer. And Brother Danny, if you would, you lead us in a word of prayer. Amen. Thank you for that. And let's continue to pray for all of these folks now, not just tonight, but every day. When you pray, take time and just ask the Lord to be a part of all these different situations that families are going through. Let me pass on to you some just brief announcements, but these are important, so I ask you to remember these. Don't forget Graduate Sunday is coming up. Of course, this Sunday is Mother's Day. The next Sunday is Graduate Sunday. The next Sunday is Memorial Weekend, and then we're into June, so there's a lot happening in the month of May. So if you have a graduate, high school, or college in your family, make sure that you get one of the sheets filled out, sign them up on the sign-up sheet out front, because time is running out to be able to do that, and we want to recognize all of our graduates, so please remember that. Also, remember the announcement about Vacation Bible School. You know, when we first started announcing Bible school, people thought, well, that's still a long ways away. It's not so long away now. It's getting here quick, and there's a lot of different events that kind of are leading up to that. So make sure that you're aware of that. And then also, I want you to remember, let's see here, the fourth quarter group is going to be going up to Bama Bucks on May the 15th. They'll be leaving here at the church at around 1:45. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you do that. And then don't forget the big yard sale that's going to be happening at the church May 16th and 17th. And if I am remembering right, that's next Friday and Saturday. And this is a project that different ones have taken on to raise funds for the new building. And when I say the gym is full of all kinds of stuff, it's full. And they're still bringing more stuff tonight. So after tonight, I can only imagine how it's going to look. But that's going to be next Friday and Saturday. Now, Tab asked me to announce a special thing about that. Next Thursday night, they're going to have a members-only pre-sale. So if you come here, I say members, but if you attend here, you are welcome to come down to the campground next Thursday night, and I think that's going to start at 5 to 7. 5 to 7, thank goodness I wrote that down, 5 to 7. They're going to charge $5 to come in. Just, again, you're giving money towards the new building, and then you can shop, and you can kind of see what's down there before the big crowds hit on Friday and Saturday. So remember that. Come down and be a part of that. Also, let me remind you about the pledge cards. We talked about the pledge campaign Sunday. We've had some already turn that in. I know a lot of people wanted time and needed time, and we're fine with that. We want you to take time, pray about it, see what the Lord would allow you to do. But then when you get to that moment, just bring that card, fold it up, stick it in one of the drop boxes, and we'll certainly appreciate all that's going to be done there. Now, let me talk about Sunday for just a second. Sunday is Mother's Day, and Mother's Day is always a great day here. But one of the problems, and we knew, remember we talked about this way back when we first started talking about this building. One of the problems is going to be parking, and parking is already a problem. We had a good crowd here. Last Sunday was just not a special Sunday, it's not like Mother's Day or anything like that. And we had about 270 people here, and we had 20 cars parked just randomly, trying to parallel park here and there because there were not enough parking places. Parking is an issue, and it's going to be a really big issue Sunday. Now, here's the thing. Here's what we're going to ask everybody to do. I know rain is in the forecast for all the days coming up. It's in the forecast for Sunday, but it looks like that the rain for Sunday is going to be later in the day. So what we're going to try and do, if the weather changes, we're going to send out some text about this come Friday and Saturday, let everybody know. But what we're going to try and do is open this grass field up again like we did Easter Sunday, and any of you that can park there, and listen, everybody can't park there. If you're older, if you have trouble, anything like that, obviously park in the main parking lot. But for those that can, park over there, create some parking places. Mother's Day will be another high attendance Sunday. We'll have a lot of visitors, a lot going on. So if you can do that, it will be greatly appreciated. But make your plans to be here. Invite some of your family to come and be here for Mother's Day. Listen, if you're a mom and your kids don't go to church, put the guilt trip on them. Hey, this is Mother's Day. Be in church with me. Let's have a great crowd. Let's have a great service. We're going to honor some moms. We're just going to have a wonderful day, and we want you to be here and be a part of that. So remember that, but remember the parking. And like I said, when we get to about Friday evening or Saturday, we'll send out some church-wide texts to let everybody know for sure what the parking situation is going to be. But if you can help us there, we'd appreciate it. By the way, if you don't get church text, all you need to do is see Diane, pass on a cell phone number to her, and she can put you on that. We don't bombard people with text. We only send out text when it's something important. And so it's not like you're going to get 10 of them a day because, number one, it's way too expensive for us to do that. But it does help us communicate things that are important when we need to. So if you'd like to be a part of that and you're not yet, see Diane and she can get you signed up for that. All right, let's get back to our Wednesday night study, and we're going to try and get you out of here before any potential rain gets here, if it's coming at all. We never know around here these days. But we're going to continue our series on the prophet of fire. And tonight, we're actually going to look at a little bit of the last chapter of 1 Kings and some of the first chapter of 1 Kings, because it kind of bleeds over what we're going to talk about. Now, I just want to remind you of something before we look at this last part of the final chapter in 1 Kings. If you were here last Sunday or last Wednesday night, we talked about that famous passage about the vineyard that this guy Naboth owned, and the king wanted it, and he was determined to try and take it away from this guy, and Naboth didn't want to sell it because that was the inheritance of the Lord, and of course it was forbidden to sell that. So Ahab goes home and tells his wife, who's just as evil as he is, if not worse, and she hatches a plot to have Naboth killed so that Ahab can take possession of the vineyard, and that's exactly what happened. And so she goes in and announces to Ahab, hey, I got you your vineyard. You go down there and claim it. It's yours. And Ahab doesn't ask any questions about what she did, because if you're married to Jezebel, you don't want to ask questions because that just might get you in worse trouble. So he just goes down there gleefully to get it. What he doesn't know is that at the same moment Jezebel is telling Ahab, go down to the vineyard, God is telling Elijah, go down to that vineyard and confront King Ahab, which he does. And he announces to Ahab, God knows what you did. God saw what happened. God knows innocent blood has been shed. And God is going to judge you one day in the future. You're going to die. And the same exact place where they killed Naboth and the dogs licked up his blood, that same thing is going to happen to you. And so Elijah just walks off, and that just kind of lingers. Now, time goes by. A good bit of time goes by. But remember this about God's judgment. God doesn't always hold people accountable as fast as we would like him to. You know, sometimes we want God to act faster than God wants to act. You know, we're like, hurry up, God, get a hold of them people. But here's what you can say about God's judgment. It may be slow, but it is sure. When God says something is going to happen, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen on his time frame. Now, having said that, let's look at these last few verses in 1 Kings 22. Now, Ahab and his army, the army of Israel, the northern kingdom, are in a battle. And the battle is almost over, but notice what happens. And a certain man drew a bow at a venture. In other words, it just so happened. This guy, even as the battle was ending, even as the king of Israel was retreating away from the battlefield, this guy who is nameless decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to give him one more arrow on the way home. And he pulls his bow back, fires an arrow off into the distance, and just by happenstance, it hits the king of Israel. Now, of course, you know, nothing in the Bible happens by happenstance. But he fired this bow at a venture, smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness, basically in the center of the back. Wherefore he said unto the driver of his chariot, turn thine hand, carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. And the battle increased that day, and the king was stayed up in his chariot against the Syrians, and died at evening, and the blood ran out of the wound into the midst of the chariot. So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. And one washed the chariot in the pool of Samaria, and wow, here it comes. And the dogs licked up his blood, and they washed his armor according unto the word of the Lord, which he spake. Now, I told you last Wednesday night when we looked at that chapter, the guy that made that chapter famous, really famous in the last century, was R.G. Lee and his sermon Payday Someday. And the whole central theme of it was, when you so offend God, when you so sin against God, there will be a payday someday. And that's what Elijah had told Ahab. One of these days, God's going to hold you accountable. You don't know when, but it's going to come. Well, that day finally came, and God's justice finally arrived for Ahab, and exactly what God said was going to happen did happen. Now, with Ahab dying, that means that his son is about to come to the throne. Now, let's watch this. Now the rest of the acts of Ahab and all that he did, and the ivory house which he made, and all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? In other words, if you want more details about Ahab, read 1st and 2nd Chronicles, because those chronicle some of his acts. So Ahab slept with his fathers, and Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. So his son comes to the throne. Now you might be thinking, okay, his son's coming to the throne, maybe, just maybe, he'll be a better version of a king than his father. And if that's what you're thinking, you're going to be disappointed. Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel and Samaria the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 2 years over Israel. Now, you probably know this, but just in case you don't, once the kingdom divided, after Solomon died, the civil war happened, and what had once been one unified nation of Israel split into two, the southern kingdom of Judah, the northern kingdom of Israel. One of the ways they kept up with the dates of when kings came to the throne was they would reference it by the king in the other kingdom. So if you became the king of the north, they would say, okay, this guy becomes king of the north in the such and such number of year reign that this guy's been the king of the south. If there was a new king in the south, it'll say, well, the new king in the south started his reign when so-and-so king of the north had been on the throne for X number of years. That's just the way to kind of timestamp when these guys were reigning. And so that's why it references Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, in the south. But here's what it does say. Even though he's going to be an evil king, he's going to have a very short reign. Just 2 years. It's not going to last long, and it's not going to be fun for anybody. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the ways of his father, and in the way of his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. Now, let me just throw something in right here. This Sunday is Mother's Day. Just a few weeks later, we're going to get to Father's Day. Parents, the influence we have on our children is incredible. And it can be a good influence or it can be a bad influence. And if you doubt that, notice how many times in the Old Testament when a new king comes to the throne, it'll say he walked in the way of his father. And notice how, and this is unusual. This isn't usually said. Usually it'll just say he walked in the way of his father. But because of the notoriety of Jezebel, notice what it says. He walked in the way of his father and in the way of his mother. That's unique. I mean, that's really unique. But that the queen is also mentioned because she had such an evil impact on him as well. But the influence we have on our kids, it cannot be overstated. And sometimes it'll say in the Bible that, you know what, his father was a good king, and when the son came to the throne, he walked in the way of his father, and he was a good king as well. But the fact that we have this kind of influence is incredibly important, and it needs to be such a priority in our life to make sure it's a good influence that's going to lead them towards God and not away from God. Here's why he was evil. For he served Baal, just like his mother and daddy, worshipped him, and provoked to anger the Lord God of Israel according to all that his father had done. So basically, he did everything his daddy did, he did everything his mama did, and God was not happy at all, as we'll see shortly. So that ends the story in 1 Kings. Now let's go right into 2 Kings, where it just picks up right where we left off. Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. So Ahab just died, what we just read. And whenever, and this is still, this still happens today. Whenever a new leader steps on the stage, that can be a very dangerous time for a country. Especially if that leader is not proven, if that leader is kind of somebody that's going to learn on the job. If you look through American history, there are so many times, especially in the last century, when the world became for a long time, having an ocean on either side of us protected the United States for a very long time. But then the world got real small because of travel and all the things that make it possible to be anywhere you want in a very short time. But notice what's happened several times in American history. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. In 1960, the United States elected John F. Kennedy, who at that point was the youngest president ever elected. He had been in Congress, but relatively inexperienced. What happened shortly after his election? Some of you remember this. What did the Russians do? They started preparing to put nuclear missiles in Cuba, which led to a huge standoff. What were they doing? We're testing this guy. This may be an opportunity for us to take advantage of a new leader. That just happens throughout history. I mean, it happens not just in stories in the Bible, but stories throughout history whenever a new leader comes along. So the Moabites decided, hey, Ahab's dead. His kid is now on the throne. He didn't have any experience. This might be a great time to move against them. So they did. And Ahaziah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria and was sick. Now, to make matters worse, this war has just started. He just gets to the throne, and he has the nation declare war against them and start moving against them, and he suffers a terrible fall. And it was a very serious fall. He was seriously injured, and so now he's sick. And listen to what he does. He sent messengers and said unto them, Go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. He said, here's what I want you to do. He got some of his guys, and he said, I want you to go to one of the temples, and I want you to inquire of this false god that my father and mother incorporated into our land, and I want you to find out, does that God say I'm going to live, or am I going to die? And watch how it happens. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise. How many times have we seen that already? Where someone evil says, I'm going to send somebody this way to do something evil, and God says to his guy, go meet him. Go meet him. And I've pointed out over and over and over again, every time Satan sends someone to do something evil around the world, God has people that he challenges to stand up and meet that evil face to face and head to head. And it happens again here through Elijah. God says, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that you go to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? He said, okay, Elijah, here's what I want you to do. He's sending these guys out to go to this temple of this false god. Go meet him. Go meet him on the road and ask them this question. Why are you going there? Is there not a God in Israel that is the true God that can answer this question? And so Elijah goes to meet them, and watch this. Now therefore, thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And Elijah departed. God says, by the way, here's what you tell him. Go and meet him, and you tell them, number one, ask them why they're going there instead of coming to me. And then God says, and I'm going to go ahead and answer his question. He won't ask me, but I'll go ahead and answer it for him. Tell him, yeah, you're going to die. You are not going to recover from this fall and this injury. You are going to die. That's the message to Ahab's son, who has just barely gotten on the throne, less than 2 years, and he's already getting this sentence from God. Yeah, you're not going to recover from this. You're going to die. And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, Why are you now turned back? So these messengers, I want you to think about this for a second. The messengers go, they're headed towards the city of Ekron. If you remember from the Old Testament, Ekron is one of the cities that the Philistines came to dominate back in the earlier time. And the Philistines had brought in their gods as well, and there was still a heavy presence of that. The Philistines had 6 cities along the coast of the ocean there, along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and those 6 coastal cities had been under their firm control for a long time, during the days of David and even after that for a while. But they had established this false worship there as well, and so the king is sending these guys to one of these coastal cities, Ekron, which was one of the main ones, and on the way there, Elijah intercepts them. And he asks them that question, why are you going there? Why are you going to a false god's temple? Why don't you ask the one true God? And then he tells them, go tell the king, here's what Jehovah said. Jehovah says you're going to die. Jehovah says you're not going to recover from this. Jehovah says you do not have long left to be on this earth. So they go back. The messengers turn back. They go back to the king. And notice what it says. They turn back unto him. That's the king. They're back at the palace. And the king said, why are you now turned back? In other words, he said, I know you guys hadn't had time to go to Ekron. Why did you come back without doing what I told you to do? Listen to what they tell him. This is such a great moment here. And they said unto him, there came a man up to meet us and said unto us, go turn again unto the king that sent you and say unto him, thus saith the Lord. The word Lord in all capital letters is Jehovah. Here's what the God of Israel, Jehovah, said. Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore shalt thou not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but thou shalt surely die. They give the king the message. And I'm sure they gave it to him kind of trembling because, you don't want to give bad news to the king. That doesn't end well a lot of times. But they tell him what happened. And then listen to what he asked. And he said unto them, what manner of man was he which came up to meet you and told you these words? The king says, who was it? Well, we don't know. He didn't give us a name. What did he look like? Describe the man that told you this. Tell me what he looked like. And they answered him, he was a hairy man, girt with a girdle of leather about his loins. And let me stop here for a second because I always try to make this clear to people. I know we're living in a more modern time now, but the word girdle does not carry in the Bible what it carries in Western culture for a long time, okay? A girdle was like a sash around the waist. It's just what held the robe in place, And in that sense, it is kind of like a girdle because a girdle is to hold things in place, okay? That's what it does. Well, that's where the idea came from, this expression of this sash that held the garments, the robe, in place. They said, here's what he looked like. He was a hairy guy. No, here's what they're saying. He was a rough-looking guy. I mean, he was kind of a wild-looking man. And he was girt about the waist with this leather sash. Now think about that for just a second. I'm going to tell you something. Do you remember when John the Baptist showed up in the New Testament? John was that wild-looking guy. And who did a lot of people in the New Testament think that John the Baptist was? That's Elijah come back from the dead. Because they had that same look about it. Very imposing, kind of scary-looking guy. And so they tell the king, here's what he looked like. Listen to what the king said. And the king said, it is Elisha. In other words, this young king, he knew who Elisha was. And how would he not? Because Elisha and his mother and father had done battle over and over and over again. Now here's the thing. Isn't it sad that he knew who the prophet of God was? He had heard all the stories about the prophet of God. And yet he still turned to a pagan god. He had seen what happened to his father. The judgment on his mother is still yet future, but it's coming. And yet he still ignored the prophet of God and turned instead to a false god down in Ekron. Now you know who that's very similar to in the New Testament? A family I've mentioned many times to you, the family of Herod the Great. All these descendants of Herod the Great. Herod the Great is the guy that's found in the Christmas story. He's the one that met the wise men. But he had children who are littered throughout the Gospels in the book of Acts. And his family came into incredibly close contact with the gospel message. The leader of the family, Herod the Great, the patriarch of the family, he met the wise men. Think about that. The guys we sing about every year at Christmas, he met them. And they told him why they were there. Messiah was being born. He knew what was happening. His sons, one of his sons, met John the Baptist, and he met Jesus on the day of the crucifixion. Some of his grandsons and great-grandsons and granddaughters and great-granddaughters met various of the disciples, and several of them met Paul face to face and actually heard Paul preach. And yet, in spite of all of that, not a one of them ever turned to God. Could you imagine being that close and missing out? Well, here's this guy who knows who Elijah is, but won't turn. You say, does he know him well? As soon as he heard the description, that's Elijah. He knows all about Elijah, but he wouldn't turn towards him. And I've always said, when you hear some of those stories like the family of Herod and this guy, and you think, oh, that's so sad that that happened. No, here's what's sad. There are people who go to church every Sunday in America, and they've heard 1,000 sermons. They've sat through 1,000 verses of Just As I Am, and they're still as far away and lost from God as they've ever been. They're so close. Remember we were reading either Sunday morning or Sunday night, I don't remember which one it was, but that verse where it said, thou art not far from the kingdom. That's these people. That's all of Herod's family. That's this guy. You're so close, but you're missing it. And this guy's missing it. So he understands right away we're talking about Elijah. Then the king, now rather than, listen, let me ask you a question. If you got word from a guy that you knew who he was, and you knew the story of how this man on Mount Carmel before the whole nation and your father prayed down fire from heaven and then personally executed over 400 prophets of Baal, if he told you you are under the judgment of God, do you think you might fall down on your knees and start begging God for forgiveness at that point? Because you know this guy's serious. This guy said it won't rain till I said it's going to rain, and it didn't rain for 3 years. He knows all this. But you know what his reaction is when he finds out it's Elijah? Listen to this. Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50 and went up to him. Here's what he does. He sends, I'm going to send soldiers out. I'm going to take care of Elijah. I may die, but I'm going to take care of him before I go. So he sends this group of soldiers out to see if they can, get a hold of Elijah. And he went up to him, and behold, this group of soldiers goes up to Elijah, and he sat on top of a hill. And he spake unto him, thou man of God, the king has said, come down. So these soldiers, this large group of soldiers go up, and there's Elijah, he's just sitting there. He doesn't run. He doesn't, try and get away. Here they come. And they said, come down here. The king is having you arrested. Then Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, if I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. That's interesting. Again, this is why he's called the prophet of fire. This is the second time he's done this. Prayed down fire from heaven. So Elijah said, well, if I'm really a man of God, I tell you what, I'm going to pray God will send down fire from heaven and consume all of y'all. And he did. So eventually, word gets back to the king. Now, you're under pronouncement of God's judgment. You know it's from Elijah. You know Elijah's a serious guy and a spokesman for God. And now you find out he prayed down fire from heaven again and consumed 50 of my soldiers. Don't you think it would be time to again fall down on your knees and say, God, I'm just going to beg for mercy? You would think that. Again also, he, the king, sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. Now, let's just pause for a moment. If I'm the second captain, and I heard what happened to the first group, I'm a little nervous. I'm like, I don't really want to go on this mission. Because this didn't end too well for the last group of 50 and the guy that was leading them. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus saith the king, come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Same result. So now 100 soldiers have been consumed by the fire and anger of God. So that report eventually gets back to the king. Now, I'm just a simple guy. But at this point, I would be laying on the ground begging God for forgiveness, telling God how sorry I am for what I've done. Not this guy. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50. Now listen, this third guy, he ain't no dummy, okay? He knows what's happened to the last two groups. So watch what he does. The last two guys came up and said, hey, buddy, get down here. You're under arrest by order of the king. Not the third guy. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and besought him and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight. Listen, what did he call those 50 soldiers? We're your servants. Now this guy's smart. He comes, he doesn't see Elijah and say, hey, get down here and be arrested. He runs to Elijah and falls down on his knees and says, please don't pray down no more fire, okay? Just listen to what I got to say. Please let all of our life be precious in your sight. And listen to what Elijah does. Behold, there came fire down from heaven, burn up the two captains of the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore, let my life now be precious in thy sight. He says, we heard what you did to the last two guys, but please show a little mercy on us. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, go down with him. Be not afraid of him. Now, sometimes I think there's certain things said in the Bible that are so funny. Listen to what the angel said. He said, Elijah, go with this guy. Go to the palace with him. And he says, Elijah, don't be afraid of him. Who's afraid of who at this point? I don't think Elijah was afraid of. I think this guy is just watching the heavens to see if any strange clouds are forming and lightning and anything. You know, he's the one that's scared to death. But the angel says, go on with him. And he arose and went down with him unto the king. And he said unto him, now he's talking to the king. Now he's standing in front of the king. First he stood in front of Ahab. Now he's standing in front of Ahab's son. Thus saith the Lord. For as much as thou hast sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore, thou shalt not come down off that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. So he died. That's the king. So the king died according to the word of the Lord which I had spoken. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the second year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. And that is the end of the line of Ahab and Jezebel's descendants. There's nobody else. So they have to go elsewhere. And then it says the same thing about him that it said about Ahab. You want to read about anything else he did? Turn to the book of Chronicles. People often ask, what is 1st and 2nd Chronicles about? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a listing of all the actions, or it's a chronicle, it's a record of all the things that all these different kings did of both kingdoms. Now, what's the point of the story? The point of the story is, you know what? When God speaks, listen. When God said to the nation of Israel, way back at Mount Sinai, number 1 on the list, do not have any other gods before me. Number 2 on the list, do not build any graven images. Number 3 on the list, don't take my name in vain. Better take God seriously. And the problem with a lot of Christians today, and I'm not talking to you guys, tell everybody on Sunday morning I said this, okay? We need to take God more seriously in our faith. God is not our big buddy upstairs. God is not my co-pilot. God's not sharing power with anybody, including me. Okay? God is not the big guy upstairs. God is the sovereign being that the Bible declares him to be. The one who always is and always has been. The one who knows all, sees all, controls all. And we ought to take God seriously. And that's something that would do all of us good, is to take our faith more seriously and to take our God more seriously. And I challenge all of us, and certainly I challenge myself to do exactly that. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Father, thank you for this time we've shared together tonight. And God, I do pray that you would help us as followers of Jesus just to be more serious about our faith, to not let it just be something that we think about on Sunday morning, but God, for it to be something that guides our thoughts, our actions, the way we treat people, the way we act, that would be something that guides us 7 days a week. Father, the Bible is littered with stories of people that did not take their faith seriously. And there are still so many to this day that don't. But I pray that you would help that not to be true of any of us. Help us to live for you, to make our life count for you, and to be the best we can be while we have the time and the opportunity. Now, with every head bowed, in a moment we're going to stand, we're going to sing. Maybe there's somebody here tonight, you got a burden on your heart. Maybe there's a need you need to pray about. Maybe there's some situation you're dealing with. You need to ask God to help you. We always want to give you a chance to do that. So let's stand together, and we're going to sing. And for any reason, I invite you to come. Listen, I want to thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it more than I can tell you. Remember all the prayer requests. Remember the announcements. Watch for announcements about the parking situation for Sunday. Help us out there if you can. But come expecting a great day. Mother's Day is always a wonderful day to be in church with family and friends, and I think it's going to be a great one this time, so make you plans to be a part of that. But right now, turn around, shake some hands, tell some folks you're glad to see them, and then you are dismissed.